Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. I'm really interested in this guest because there's the background. You guys will figure it out. I'll tell you. I don't want to ruin it for you, but I want to welcome Nohtal Partansky, the CEO of Sorting Robotics, to the show. Thank you so much for being on.
Hey, how's it going?
So before we jump into, I was listening to your other interviews and like there was so much information about what you did with NASA, and I'll get into all that stuff. But I don't think we really know you. So I'm curious about who you are. So first, where did you grow up?
I grew up in LA actually. Yeah, I grew up in South Pasadena, Highland Park area. I would say like that area was kind of my stomping grounds in like junior high, high school, like Pasadena, Glendale.
Got it. Yeah, I live in Studio City, and our office is
Okay.
in Burbank, so I'm pretty familiar with the area. But I'm from Philly originally. I've been out here for like 13 years now, so and no desire to go back to the cold. This is perfect.
Yeah, no,
So
it's definitely better here
so
because
so
it's
t-
warmer.
tell me. I'm curious about this. So Highland Park, like Pasadena area, is that considered the
Mhm.
Valley still?
Oh no, that's not the valley. Like I guess the valley is like
It,
past Glendale, right? So right now the company is currently located in Van Nuys. So
okay,
like we're in like the
that's the
heart of the
Valley.
valley,
That's the
right?
Valley.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Van Nuys is the valley. We're still on the other side of the hill when you think about like Pasadena
Got it.
and like Highland Park area.
So this whole thing of West Side versus Valley, did you grow up in that kind of environment? Because when I talk to people from LA, they're like, the Valley, but the Valley's changed. I mean, it's not the same as it used to be, but they're like, no. I didn't never go over the hill. That's West Side. Did you ever? What's that all about?
Dude, like I didn't. I like it was really weird actually. Because I grew up in like Pasadena and I basically spent like all my time in like Pasadena, Glendale, kind of Highland Park, like that
Right.
little like triangle. Um and then when I got older and I went around and I finally came back, I came back and I lived in Pasadena because I was working at NASA JPL in Pasadena. And then I still didn't really feel it. But then when I moved the company to Van Nuys, and I was like in the valley, and I actually had like a pretty negative connotation of Van Nuys when I was growing up because like I was
Okay.
only here like two or three times, and it was like to go to like a car dealership, and in my mind I was like Van Nuys is just warehouses, and like that's
Yeah.
it. Like that's I was like,
Yeah.
um, and then I moved the company here, and I noticed that Van Nuys is just warehouses. No,
Exactly.
uh,
You're
but
right.
you're right. Like that actually is it. But no, I was talking to a few of my friends, and once I moved to like, and I like personally, I moved to like Reseda, and then I moved to Van Nuys, and now I live in Sherman Oaks, and like there's like a thing, and I didn't know between like Santa Monica and Sherman Oaks, Beverly Hills, and like Van Nuys. Like there's like a thing on this side of LA where people are like, oh, I don't go over the hill, or they go, oh, it's the valley, but like it's Sherman Oaks, so it's fine. It's like what? And yeah, there's like a weird vibe. I don't know. Yeah,
I
and I
agree
just
with
live
you.
in
I
East
never
Coast.
I never I never got that. And I don't understand it because like I travel all around LA and you go to Eagle Rock and it's like it's completely different. Like you're living in a different world than from Beverly Hills or from my ex-wife lives in Manhattan Beach. So like it's completely different worlds, but people don't really travel. No, I stay in my area. I don't go here and there. So I find it strange. But
Yeah, one thing I did kind of have that I kind of always had because I guess there's never really a reason to go to the valley, right? Like nothing happens here. Like you always have to come down. Like it's just like it's a huge square of just residential and warehouses. And so I did have a joke with my friend that it was like dude, I can't go past the 405. Like, if you're past the 405, you might as well just be like in a different state because if I go past the 405, it's like a fucking mission. So
There
like,
you go. Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. But you do get in Van Nuys, you do get still the guys, and I think I've seen a couple of times in the lowriders and the hydraulics. You ever see those guys that
yeah,
drive up and
yeah,
down Van Nuys? So you get that. But I find Studio City to, I mean, nobody cares about what we're talking about right now because they're like, who cares about
yeah.
Studio City in the Valley? But I'm curious, so it doesn't matter. Studio City is cool. Like I never understood what this whole thing with the Valley because you can. There's restaurants, there's bars,
But
all kinds of
Studio
things to
City
do.
is the valley, right?
Right. That's why it is
Yeah.
part of the Valley,
But
right? So
people don't really talk about it like it's a part of the valley. They're like, oh, it's Studio City. It's like
okay.
what? But like it is the valley. It's like no, well, that's where Universal Studios is. But that's not like the valley. It's like, what?
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So I got the geography right. So going back to you, you have brothers or sisters? Like
Yeah, yeah. I got one older sister, no brothers.
okay. So I'm trying to get like sort of the timeline and your mindset when you were a kid because were you sort of like this kid who dreamt about space in general? Like, I remember Peter Diamandis, he would talk about, I was a kid who was always like dreaming into space. And even when he was, went to medical school, he was a doctor. He wanted to go to MIT for engineering because his mission in life was space. I'm trying to bridge the gap. What were you like as a kid? Was that a dream of yours?
No. Yeah, so let's see. When I was I mean, I don't know. I was very much like a kind of chill, like do whatever I want sort of kid. Like I wasn't really I would say I didn't really have a ton of ambition when I was younger. I did want to be a doctor, like all the way up until college, because my mom's a psychiatrist.
Okay.
And so like I basically wanted to like be like my mom. I'm like, oh
Mhm.
cool, I want to be a psychiatrist and do that. And then I kind of noticed that like I liked the human body as like a
Mhm.
mechanism and almost like a device that does cool things. But I didn't want to ever be in the position where like I was a doctor and somebody had like lung cancer from smoking for 30 years. And then like I had to be like, dude, you have lung cancer for smoking for 30 years. And they're like, yeah, well, I guess I'm just gonna keep smoking. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't do anything for you, you know? And so like I didn't want to be in like that position. And
Mhm.
so when I got to college, I just focused on engineering.
Mhm.
And then um I did always, however, really like airplanes. Like
Okay.
from when I was, I mean, yeah, I mean, as long as I can remember, I liked airplanes
Yeah.
and I liked sci-fi. And so maybe I didn't dream to be among the stars, like a kid who like sees an astronaut and says, "I want to be an astronaut." I never really was like, "I want to be an astronaut," but I did like space travel and sci-fi and airplanes, and I used to fly model airplanes, sometimes competitively as well. And
Okay.
so I was really into that. And
What was that part of the like the I read somewhere that you were in an air design competition and you
that was in college.
okay,
Yeah,
okay, got it.
yeah. So in college, I was a part of this thing called SAE Air Design,
Mm.
which basically we built a model airplane, and I became the captain of it because yeah, no one in the college had done model airplanes before that except me. Like I had
Right.
flown all throughout junior high and high school at an airfield in Whittier Narrows,
Mm.
and no one knew how to fly model airplanes. No one knew how to build model airplanes, and so I kind of got there and I'm like, okay, so we're gonna build this airplane, right? That sounds cool. That sounds easy. And everyone's like, wait, what? You know how to build airplanes? I'm like, you don't? What the
What do you
fuck?
mean?
Like,
Everybody knows
so
how to build an airplane. What do you mean?
yeah, it was really weird. And so yeah,
Hey,
then I became the captain of that, and then we won.
have you ever been to Dayton, Ohio?
No.
Yeah, I was just curious because an airplane guy. So it was the Wright brothers. So I had relatives who happened to be in Dayton, Ohio, out of all places in the world, and we go there and we have the Wright brothers were there's a plaque and there was a museum for them, and they had this air show there, and apparently it's like a world renowned air show because it's where airplanes started. So I was just thinking
Mm.
if you ever were there, but I accidentally voted. They had that a vote to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I came in, I voted for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I was from Philly, and it was between Philly and Cleveland. And I didn't read. I voted for Cleveland. So I think if they won by one vote, I voted for the wrong city, and I apologize, Philly. I wasn't reading right. So okay, so you did that. You weren't in the airplanes. You were in the sci-fi. I get that, but then, I just want to get the timeline right. You went for engineering, but then you got involved in fuel cells, right? Something to do with fuel cells in harsh environments. I'm curious about that too. So maybe you can kind of illuminate me a little bit.
So the fuel cells was when I was working at NASA JPL.
Okay.
That was like all the way got into the professional career.
All right. So I went too far in advance. I definitely want to talk about JPL, but
too far. Yeah.
Yeah. So take me through the model airplanes and then how that kind of coincided with your other ambitions moving forward.
Yeah. So basically, I went to school. I went to undergrad as an engineering major. I started in biochemical engineering, and then noticed that my friends were taking machine shop class and like other kind of cool things. I was like, oh, I want to do that. I don't really care about this chemistry stuff. And so I then focused on mechanical engineering, and then I wanted all these electives, and all these electives were like aerospace focused ones. They were like thermo fluids and computational fluid dynamics and aerodynamics and stuff. And so I was just like, okay, I'm gonna get all these electives. And then my counselor was like, well, you're taking all these electives. If you take 3 more classes or 4 more classes, you'll be able to double major in mechanical and aerospace engineering. I'm like, well, then why not? And so I kind of like added that on. And then I also got a minor in music as well. And so that was the undergrad kind of career.
Dude, I didn't know anything about music. I'm gonna have to take this interview in a whole different direction, but I'll pause because I'm a big music guy. But we'll get into it too. I did not know.
Yeah, I see all your albums in the back.
Yeah, albums, and I have my pictures.
Cool.
So yeah, I have my Kiss, my Snoop, my Metallica, Beatles, Black Sabbath, Rolling Stones, all those guys.
Nice.
So, yeah, we'll get into that. All right, so then you did the double major and minor in music, and then where was that? At Georgia Tech or what?
No, that was at UC Davis.
Oh, that was at Davis
in California. Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to ask you. I read something in your bio or somewhere in the profile. You were a tutor for athletes, right?
Oh yeah.
So who are the athletes at UC Davis? Do they have a good athletic program? Is there a Division I?
I mean, it's a AA school, I think.
Okay. I don't want to disparage anybody from UC Davis. I just wasn't aware of their fantastic like Division I football team or anything else. Maybe there's
yeah, I mean,
a lacrosse team.
I think they might be Division I now in football. Okay. I'm not entirely certain. But I was tutoring the track athletes. Specifically, there was a couple athletes that did track and they were in engineering. And I guess if you are on the college team, you get tutoring for free because you're busy running or doing college athlete type things, and you need extra help, to kind of review stuff and like a partner to review stuff. And so I kind of stepped in and helped one of the other people in the engineering department, and I kind of taught her how to do stuff for actually numerical methods. So yeah,
I just find your background fascinating because you have this. It seems to me that you have this entrepreneurial bug in you as well. So you're doing all these things, but you're trying to see what can I do to launch a business in this. Not only am I learning to do this, but what can I do to actually create a business around it? So the one that I wanted to ask, the name escapes me. I think I wrote it down somewhere, but you mentioned something about having an in and out for fast food, but healthy fast food.
Oh yeah.
A plant burger. So talk to me about it, because I don't eat meat. I haven't eaten meat in like 13 years. And
oh, cool.
I saw that Kevin Hart now has this, plant-based fast food. So I'm like, were you ahead of your time, or tell me a little bit about that, because I'm super curious.
Yeah, I mean, so kind of was 2017, and I was looking for my next thing, and I kind of came to the conclusion that like I wanted to build a business. It didn't particularly mean which type of business or
Mhm.
uh, like what domain or whatever. And so one of my friends was vegetarian, and on my birthday in 2017, he brought me this Beyond Meat patties. And on my birthday, I did like a big grill, like a cookout. Is it my birthday's in May, so it's summertime,
Well,
and I
what
make,
May what?
May 26th.
Okay. Mine is May
Yeah.
12th, so I was just
Oh, okay, cool. Hey, like I mean, that's Gemini, right? Are you Gemini?
Taurus.
Or is that Taurus still?
After it's
Taurus?
Taurus
Okay.
after the 23rd or 4th. I don't know. I don't know anything about horoscope, but yeah, I'm a Taurus.
Okay.
But go ahead. I interrupted you.
Um, so yeah, no worries. So he brought in, sorry. So he brought this like Beyond Meat patties, and
Right.
then we cooked it on the grill and everything. And I was just like, okay, this is pretty good, right? Like, man. And he's like, yeah, this is completely vegan. It's not even vegetarian, it's vegan. I was just like, oh, no shit. Okay, like this is cool. I never even heard about this. And so I kind of started thinking about it more and more. And I was like, you know what? Like, uh, there's definitely a place in the market for this because basically I was looking for a problem to solve, right? Something that
Mhm.
had like a large market, something that was a significant issue, and something that hadn't been solved yet. And I came to the conclusion after talking with a few of my vegan vegetarian friends, like they can't go to In and Out, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, they can get like a grilled cheese or something like that, but like
Yeah.
it's not, it's not made on like a vegan grill, so like there's always going to be cross contamination and whatever. And so it was kind of my like idea, you know what, I'll make an In and Out for vegans
Love it.
because that's a large portion of the population and it's like continuously growing. And then actually like I wasn't vegetarian or vegan at all before then. And
Mhm.
then when I started getting into it, I was like, okay, like yeah, it sounds cool. It sounds doable. And this is 5 years ago, I guess. And I started being vegan and like experimenting with recipes, working with my now sister's husband, and because he's a chef, and so we were kind of like making different formulations, and then eventually we got like a vegan hamburger that was the In and Out version. Like it had like thin patties, it had that crunch, it was like a very light burger, and then I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, like we'll just sell this and we'll like start at I don't know, have you ever been to Smorgasbord LA down in downtown LA?
Yeah. 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 For sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So um we started our pop up there, and we went there every Sunday for like 9 months.
Um,
And the idea was we start here, we make this pop up, we do a couple more pop ups, we gather enough funds until we get some investors, and then open a location, and then franchise out and like do the whole thing.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then basically like 9 months into it, we got to like a break even point. I learned a lot about like social media marketing and um, you know local social media and like the food kind of scene in LA. And yeah, and it was just very interesting. And then my co-founder was like, "Yeah, man, I'm not sure if I really want to like flip burgers for the rest of my life or anything." And I was just like, "Yeah, that's fair." And I also noticed that, man, it's really hard to scale a food business. Like, holy crap,
Yeah.
it doesn't scale well at all, honestly. Like, and
Mhm.
so, um, and the economies of scale don't work out very great. And then I kind of noticed that like it really wasn't, I mean, difficult enough, I guess you could say. Like, I kind of knew what needed to be done, and honestly, I could have just like hired a few people to do it and like let them, go through the process. And it wasn't very technical, and I kind of like wanted to get back into technical things. So at the beginning of 2018, I like shut down that company, and then like the next week, I started this company.
Got it. Well, that's helpful. That makes a lot of sense. So again, I skipped ahead of the timeline because my ADD kicked in, and that's what happens. But
Yeah, no worries.
going back to JPL, so from tutoring and aerodynamics and all that other stuff, how did you make the jump to NASA?
Um, It was actually like a relatively linear sort of path. So
Okay.
went to UC Davis, got my degrees, got into Georgia Tech, and then Georgia Tech is I think it's like the second or third aerospace engineering school in the country, and Caltech and JPL are like intertwined, and so JPL uses Georgia Tech as a funnel school, and so they came to Georgia Tech. At that point, I had already started my first company, which was a 3D printing company, and I was able to do all the things that like a entrepreneur engineer can do, like design something from scratch, sell it, build a supply chain. We sold products to United States and Canada, and then eventually noticed that 3D printing industry back in 2014 like wasn't the best place to be. It was super fragmented, super difficult to really scale and convert customers. And so we wound that down. But it was, very impressive to the guys at NASA and the guys at SpaceX, and I applied to a few other people. And yeah, so then went from Georgia Tech, got my master's degree straight into JPL. And then when I was at JPL, I worked on the Moxie project, which was that fuel cell thing that you were talking about.
Yeah. So for those of you who know, it's JPL, it's the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at NASA. So as you're working in this fuel cell for harsh environments, whatever, was that an entryway for you into robotics in general, or did that come later?
No, I learned a lot of my robotics when I built my first company, the 3D printing company, because 3D printers are just robots. Yeah. So I learned a lot during then. I did a bunch of robotics when I was in high school. And then when I went to go work at JPL, I wasn't specifically working in the robotics side of things. That was like a different group. And I was mostly working on the spacecraft instruments and payloads.
Okay. So the technology that you're working with on fuel cells, is that like a filtration system? And is that what's been, I read somewhere that it's been utilized on Mars, or is that something different?
No, it's the same thing.
Okay, got it.
So the project for Moxie, its whole purpose was to be a technology demonstrator project that went on the Perseverance rover that's currently on Mars.
Got it.
And so they actually ran that project, and I think a few months ago declared mission success. So like, hooray, I'm pretty happy for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what that project was supposed to do was supposed to ingest the atmosphere of Mars, which is majority like CO2, so carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So it would suck in carbon dioxide into this fuel cell, and then it would heat it up super hot to like a fifth the temperature of the sun. An eighth the temperature of the sun, and it would get so hot that the carbon dioxide would actually like break apart. And so then you get carbon monoxide and O2. Right. And so the whole goal of our project is to prove to NASA and the world that we can create O2 on Mars using the resources of Mars. Because if you had to bring all the oxygen with you, it would weigh way too much and you'd never be able to get it off the ground.
Yeah, it makes total sense. You can create your own environment by breaking down whatever the environment is existing in that on Mars. So it totally makes sense. And then be able to harness that environment and then create those, enclosed structures that will pump oxygen in it. I guess that would be probably the goal of how to use it, right? To build so really cool stuff, man. I think it's fascinating. I'm super geeky when it comes to that stuff. So I'm really fascinated, but going back to you getting out and being an entrepreneur again, I read that you had a company that you sold to eBay, right?
It was like a few orders removed, sold to eBay, but yeah, kind of. So yeah, I guess I should just say I sold it to eBay. That would be
just say you sold it to eBay, and that's it.
Yeah,
it'll look good on the
details. Yeah,
doesn't matter. Nobody cares about the details these days. Anyway. It's like, oh, exit out of eBay, VCs, man. There you go.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So It was actually the first iteration of this company. So when we first started sorting robotics, our first product was something called the Roca sorter, which was a device that scanned and organized trading cards,
Mhm.
specifically Magic the Gathering cards. I don't know if you know trading cards at all. It's kind of like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh.
Okay.
Trade, like
I
yeah.
know baseball cards,
So
so that's about it as far
okay,
as I
yeah.
know.
So yeah, the other side of the store with the ones with the cartoons on them.
Oh, the
Yeah, that's the
Dungeon
ones.
Dragons kind of stuff.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
All right.
So we built this device that sorted these cards for people that sold trading cards online.
Uh-huh.
And that was what we started in 2018, kind of moonlighting from JPL.
Right.
And then in 2019, we noticed we wanted to go after a bigger market. So we got into Y Combinator, which is like a startup accelerator program. And then we tried to look for like a larger market, eventually settling on the cannabis market as a
Well,
focus for us.
it's just pause that. Let's go back to White Combinator.
Oh, okay.
Explain that and how you actually what you had to do and how you got selected and how you were able to utilize them to get your idea off the ground. I guess if that's what they
Sure.
did.
Yeah, I mean, basically what happened was at the end of 2018, we were selling these trading card sorting machines,
Right.
and we had sold a few of them already, and we noticed that okay, these are good. We were selling them for like 25 grand a piece, and we were like making pretty good money off of it, and like, all right, this is cool, but we kind of noticed like this company is never really going to be like a huge company because the market's so small. There's only so many people that are selling trading cards online, right?
Mhm.
And so we had to think about it a lot, and we're just like, okay, how do we find a bigger market? And so we started applying to startup accelerators to like expand our network,
Mhm.
and then eventually we applied to Y Combinator. And I kind of was of the impression at that point, like if we get into any startup accelerator, we should really only get into like Y Combinator or Techstars. Like all
Mhm.
the other ones, like just don't matter. And so we got into YC and we didn't get into Techstars, so whatever. And YC is like the best one anyway. And that was like a pretty big moment for us because it showed like, okay, we kind of got outside validation.
Right.
And like that process was pretty intense.
Mhm.
You do like an interview with a bunch of group partners, and it's only 10 minutes long, and you have to like show that you know what you're talking about and that you know what you're doing. And what ended up happening is they let us in and they told us, yeah, we're only letting you in because specifically you want to find a bigger market
Mhm.
because you are not investable. Like that's what they told us. They're like, you and your trading card machine, which is very fancy and cool, and like it shows that you can do this, right? It like we had product market fit and all those good things. But this is not, an investable company. This is like a lifestyle business.
Right.
So find a bigger market, and then you'll be able to continue through going through the program. So we're like, great, well that's what we want to do. Find a bigger market. So that's kind
Mhm.
of the YC story.
So what was if it's a two-part question. Why cannabis and what was the problem that you were trying to solve?
Yeah. I mean, those are basically the same question.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we like looked at a lot of different industries, and me and my co-founder Cassio, he's a like computer scientist. He was doing his PhD before like I kind of convinced him to quit and join this company. And we want to build things that like don't exist.
Mhm.
There are a bunch of other markets where people are all kind of doing similar things with robotics, just like slightly different ways and whatnot. But what we noticed when we looked at the cannabis space was that because of its federal legalization status, these massive companies were just ignoring it completely, like
Mhm.
almost in an offensive way, right? There's all this industry that's trying to grow, trying to become more sophisticated, and Siemens and Honeywell and like Fanuc, like these like large entities that normally do integration for like food processors and stuff like we're just
Mhm.
ignoring cannabis industry altogether, which you can't blame them, but it's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
So what that allowed us to do was to say, okay, cool. If we go into this industry, we'll be able to build the foundation of that industry. We'll be able to build the like initial processes on how to just do anything, how to manufacture cannabis products.
Mm,
And so that's what really drove us to this industry. And the problem was that there were deeply underserved manufacturers in the space.
mm.
And the reason why we chose cannabis was because there was just not enough people addressing that problem. And if we joined in, then we could address the problem. And, we also have like a positive disposition towards cannabis, right? Like I'm not like, oh, reefer madness sort of thing. It's like, no, like I smoked in college. I did not smoke at NASA, for the record. I
Were
was
they drug
completely,
testing? Were they?
they
Is that?
don't drug test so much, at least at JPL, they don't.
Yeah.
At least they didn't do the engineers.
I think they should.
But
I think they should actually provide cannabis for the engineers because they can get a lot more creative at NASA, and maybe not lose out
yeah,
as much to SpaceX because I'm sure those engineers do too.
yeah, I mean, Jesus, I'm sure they do. Like maybe not weed, but like to keep up with those work
Hey
hours, who
man,
knows?
whatever. So tell me, I'm trying to get a picture painted. Uh, what is it actually like? How are you implementing about it? What does it actually do? So like I understand that you're trying to address the supply chain and manufacturing through robotics, but like walk me through the process of what it is that you do.
Yeah, I mean, we spent a few years in the cannabis market before even like really bringing a product to market. So
Mhm.
when we first came in, we built like a biomass sortation system to
Okay.
kind of understand like what that supply chain looked like. And our goal there was a business model that was like an arbitrage on the market. It was like very fancy, but
Mhm.
then the market shifted and that arbitrage opportunity kind of collapsed.
Mhm.
And it really showed us that like we didn't understand the cannabis market. And if we wanted to serve these customers, we had to like be these customers. And so I took some time off from the robotic side. I took like kind of split my time between the robotics side and helped build a cannabis co-packing company in Oakland and ran that for almost 3 years. And and in the first year or two, we learned a ton. We learned about the industry. We learned about what it's like to be an operator. We learned, I mean, everything you could about the cannabis industry. I mean, all the way to like actually trimming the machine or trimming the flower, and like that company got to be like 60 people at one point, and so it was like a real operation.
So was there a cultivation facility, or were you just getting raw material, processing it, and sort of co-packing, white labeling for different brands?
Yeah, basically co-packing and white labeling for
Got it.
Bay Area brands.
Got it. Got it. And what all kinds of different products, flour or concentrate, and whatever is required.
Yeah, I mean, we focus mostly on the flower side.
Got it.
So people would bring like flower on the stem
Yeah.
dried.
Yeah.
We would buck it down, trim it either hand or machine trim, and then we would take the A's, which is like the high grade flower, and then we would put it into bags or jars. And then we would take the B's and we'd make pre rolls out of them. And we'd
Mm,
either make normal pre rolls or infused pre rolls. We'd take the trim, we'd send it to one of our partner companies. They'd make concentrates out of it. We'd take the concentrates back, we'd package the concentrates. So for a cultivator in the Bay Area, it was great. They just like gave us their dried flower and we gave them back retail ready products
good.
that they can send off to stores.
Got it. Okay, so you did that. You learned from that experience, and then how did you implement what you learned into the company now?
Yeah, I mean, we built a bunch of stuff for that industry for that company also. Like
Okay.
sorting robotics would step in when I was like, "Why are we doing this? This is fucking stupid." Like, and so we would be like, "Okay, like let's build some software to make this simpler," or let's take this guy out of the production line and put a robotic arm instead. Like easy things we would kind of build for and then simplify the operations at that facility. And that facility was probably one of the most sophisticated facilities in the state. Like I know a lot
Mm,
of the facilities in the state,
yeah.
and we were probably one of the best well-run ones in the state. And so we learned a lot of the problems, right? Because we ran into them every day.
Yeah.
And so then I would take that knowledge and come back to the robotics side and be like, okay, let's solve this problem, or let's put that on the product roadmap. And the first one that I thought was extremely interesting was infused joints. And
Yeah.
that's the product that we launched last year.
So you're using in sorting robotics, you're using robot arms to infuse, or there's infusers actually that infuse the joints, or like is that how it works? I'm trying to picture it too. And by the way, let me preface by saying my knowledge of robotics, and I have a little bit from just because I'm interested in it. My dad was an engineer, and I'll never forget he did a project for Crayola. And Crayola was going through this whole thing of assembly lines and how they do their crayons. So he implemented robotics. And this is, I don't know, 30 years ago or more, where they did robot arms and they actually sharpened the crayons and put them in and did this whole thing. And he took me to the plant, and that's my only visual of, wow, it goes in, there's a robot arm, pulls it out, puts them in the boxes. They're all identical. And before, it wasn't like this. There are different kinds of machines. So I'm trying to picture it in that way with having that frame of reference in mind.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, there's no robotic arm in the infusion machine.
Right.
Contrary to popular belief, everyone thinks a robot is either like a humanoid machine or it's like a robotic arm. But really, a robot is any device that carries out a series of commands and has a closed loop control on those commands.
Mm-hmm.
So, like 3D printers are robots, your Roomba is a robot. Most kind of autonomous devices are robots.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go from like the difference between automation and robotics. And I think the biggest thing between those is like one has closed loop control and then like one doesn't have closed loop control. Like automation like does stuff, but it doesn't know if it did it correctly or not. And then robotics does stuff and it does know, and then it makes decisions on if it didn't do it correctly or not.
So
that's the way I see it.
I think it's a great explanation. So let me the decisions that it makes is using machine learning algorithms that you utilize and you train the machine through machine learning. Correct? Is that kind of how it works?
I mean, sometimes you don't have to have machine learning, and sometimes you do. Like if it's ever computer vision, like computer vision is basically machine learning. They're almost synonymous. Like you can't have one without the other.
Got it.
So for us, it's less computer vision on the infusion side and more computer vision on like the packaging side. Got
it. So what from infused, pre-rolls, what else is coming next?
Yeah, so we have one machine, right, that does the GCO robot is the kind of needle that injects into a pre-roll and leaves a column of concentrate down the center. And then after that, we have the Omni Filler, which is a vape cartridge filling device, like kind of a pharmaceutical grade level. That's and in that same approach, we just like looked at a problem and then said, okay, we're not going to try to like steal devices from other industries. We're just going to like look at what this industry needs specifically and engineer from that, from like a first principles approach. And then kind of coming down the pipeline, we're going to get more into the packaging side of things, where we pick up the finished goods and then we'll like inspect them to do quality control with like computer vision, and then we'll drop them into like a final package, like a bag or like a box or something like that.
So when you're saying you inspect them, you have to do a certificate analysis, you have to test them. So are you actually inspecting for, does it meet the C of A, or are you inspecting, does it meet parameters that you set forth for weight, whatever? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what that inspection would entail.
I mean, the inspection can change between a lot of things, right? So I would say on the jar side, you're really inspecting the jar to make sure that the label is correct. It's kind of like doing what a human does, right? Like it'll confirm that the label is correct. It'll confirm that the label is placed correct. It'll confirm that the jar is actually filled with flour. And that's on like the jar side, right? And then if you're looking at like the vape cartridge side, it'll confirm that the vape cartridge is actually filled. And then after that, it'll just make sure it goes into the right location, because sometimes bags and like cartridges are not always in the right location, and you need the computer vision to like do like a targeting system.
So the first one we opened up in Santa Ana, it was called Kush Kingdom, and then one of my partners came up and said, "I'm with Corrupt." So, I mean, long story short, my background besides cannabis, I used to be an activist, or whatever. You can look me up, but it's not about me as the interview, but but anyway, so I was a commercial real estate broker for part of my life, and through real estate, I was a managing director of KW Commercial, which is Keller Williams Real Estate Commercial Division. And one of the things I learned from there, I really liked the quasi franchise model. So it's not a true franchise. You pay into by still flying the flag of Keller Williams, but everybody's owner operated separately, except you pay sort of dues to run, to keep the branding the same. So I came up with an idea. I thought, why can't we do this in the cannabis space? There are no brands. There's, this way before MedMen and everything else, but there's nobody that goes to a Kush Kingdom shop in Anaheim, which was our second location, versus Santa Ana. How to make sure we maintain the same one? So anyway, that was the model we implemented. There's a management company, they pay a management fee, and then we have our, they fly the Kush Kingdom flag, the logo, the merch, and all that stuff. And then we became the exclusive home of Corrupt's Kush, and then sometime later, Method Man's Blackout OG. So we had, we were expanding, and we had merch, and this is way before cookies. Actually, there were some interactions with Burner back in the day, but our merch was cool. We had a cool logo. So we started this campaign on Facebook, and this is way early. Say, if you take a picture wearing our merch with like somebody famous or in a landmark like the Eiffel Tower, you'll get like, I don't know, a free joint or a free eighth. I don't remember what it was. And we started blowing up like that.
Okay.
And more and more shops were opening. And then I get a call from my manager of my Anaheim shop, and she said, the feds are here. What do I do? Like, whatever the fuck they tell you to do. So, we had
215, right?
This is 2010 now.
Oh, and I'm saying these are like 215.
Prop 215 SB 420. Yeah. 215 compliant. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I thought you said 1015. So yeah, absolutely. And this is before probably the Cole memo and all that stuff. So met with a guy from DOJ, and it's like 14 days cease and desist. You do that, and we won't prosecute. So that was my story. But at the end of the day, and then I had a delivery service. We had a cultivation facility. We had a cultivation facility in that facility. It was a great education. But at the end of the day, my purpose is always the therapeutic properties of plant. I was always curious about why two people can consume the same cultivar and have a different experience. So I got into plant genomics and then into human genomics, and that's how we launched our company, Endocanna Health. But it taught me a lot about how this business is really. There were so many different moving parts, and it was very difficult. It's ag, it's manufacturing, it's marketing. It's a whole different thing of climate control, because even in cure, and you mentioned this, like people coming in with branches of cure. Well, how do we know it was cured in the right facility for that specific cultivar? How do we know the humidity levels were right? How are we expressing all the terpenes that are supposed to be based on that genetics? So it's a fascinating industry, and the complexity of the plant makes it really difficult for pharma to get their arms around it, and that's why they're always focusing on single molecules or two molecules, and which is fine. And I actually wanted to ask you, would you think? There's two questions before I even get into that. I read somewhere your thoughts on artificial intelligence. Maybe it was Medium or something like that. So I wanted to see if you can maybe talk about that a little bit more, because there's so many different thoughts on AI, and Zuckerberg battling Elon Musk on their thoughts about AI. But I thought your statements were pretty interesting. So maybe you can share some of those or your thoughts.
Um, yeah, I mean, on AI, like let's see, I think I know what conversation you're talking about. I think it was like a podcast or something.
Yeah,
That like I was the guy was like really into AI, and I was like,
yeah,
okay, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things there. Um, I mean, my thoughts on AI are kind of along the same lines as Elon, but not so doom and gloom, I guess. Like he might have I mean, he definitely has a different perspective in terms of like seeing the cutting edge research.
yeah.
But from my view into the research and like the actuality of how sophisticated these algorithms are and they can be,
Mm,
and I don't think anything's really there. Like I'm not super worried about an AI taking over the world anytime
yeah,
soon and turning off the internet or something like that.
yeah.
Um, but I do think it's awesome and like I mean I hope I can contribute to the growth of our mechanical overlords. So
Well, I think you are.
yeah,
And man, but it's inevitable. Like in my opinion, it's inevitable because you have to be able to use. And I think people use AI as just like it's AI, and now you talk about sci-fi, but doing machine learning is actually it's improving the processes at a scale that's much faster than we can actually do. So why not leverage that and get better and better and better? I think it's just going to raise the whole society. I hope that's the use of it. But I mean, we use machine learning in what we do in our business. You use it in different aspects of yours, and it's only used for improving quality, etc., and then learning much
and it's
faster
also
with it.
very limited too, right? Like it's you can't do AI like they make it seem like in sci-fi movies where you plug in like you don't have a Jarvis, right?
No,
Hey
it's not
Jarvis,
iRobot, right? Exactly. It's
yeah,
exactly.
it's so limited, and like I get the whole idea of it's an exponential growth in sophistication,
Yeah.
but I mean maybe later because right now like you, it's everything in AI is like kind of fake now,
Yeah.
right? It's doing stuff, but it's not originating thought, right?
Right.
It's copying, and it's
Yeah,
copying,
you're telling
yeah,
it what to think and then just how to scale
how to figure it
better,
out.
how to figure it out. Exactly right. So in you're not plant you're sort of on the answer. You're not really plant touching in a way,
No,
but
we're not plant touching at
right.
all. No, so like the that co-packing company was plant touching,
Right, right, right,
obviously.
right.
But no, we don't. No, we don't touch the plant whatsoever. We're
So,
just cannabis adjacent, like
yeah,
ancillary.
yeah, like us too. So is your model to provide the technology to different manufacturers so they can use that? Is it like they here buy this machine or lease this machine? What's the business model?
It's actually both of those things, right? So we offer like our Gico robot, people buy that machine, and then we can either finance it for them. And then the Omni filler and like all of our subsequent robots, those are going to be in like leasing robotics as a service models
Got it.
where we charge per unit.
Mm,
That way they don't have this like massive, hundreds of thousands of dollars capex costs,
yeah.
which is like very burdensome, especially to kind of the smaller operators in the space and the SMBs.
Mm,
Um, but then in those cases, we do like a robotics as a service where there's really nothing upfront that they have to pay, and they just pay per unit. And if they need more, we just give them more machines, and they pay per unit, as opposed to them saying, okay, you know what, I need to pay like 200 grand, and then I need
got,
another machine. I need 200 more grand. It's more like, yeah, just pay as you go.
got it. So what are some of the obstacles that you're facing right now?
I would say supply chain has been like a definitely kind of weird sort of annoyance,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, a good obstacle. Um,
Is that due
yeah,
to the China and all the manufacturing challenges, the supply chain from those parts? Got it.
yeah, like Southeast Asia has been or East Asia has been like really
Right.
messing with the supply chain pretty significantly, honestly.
Mhm.
And I spent the better part of the year like buying 9 months in advance inventory, which is kind of a huge risk because like if you change the design or you do this or you do that, it's a problem.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and then even like stateside manufacturing, because they could say like, oh, move all your manufacturing to the United States. Like, okay, sure, but not every single part in every single device is even physically possible to be made in the United States. So
Mhm.
we've had times when like we're buying from domestic suppliers, but then their supply chain gets messed up because they have one part that's made in Taiwan or in China,
Right.
and it's been made there for like the past 20 years, and it's not like they're gonna like swap up that whole supply chain, and so now they're just like getting all these crazy hiccups. So we'll either get that affecting us either directly or indirectly,
Right.
um, but either way, it's kind of a pain, and that's probably been our most annoying like part of this year.
Got it. So what's the, I think you mentioned additional devices. Is your goal to uh, growth plan basically MSOs, companies in the US, or do you have international aspirations, or what's next, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, today we currently have devices in United States and Canada, so we're
Mhm.
in all of North America at this point. Or I mean, I guess Mexico is North America, so maybe not all of North America.
Part of
So
North America.
part of North America, yeah. So we're in the United States and Canada, and I would say probably next year we'll start moving to Europe because it looks like Germany has legalized weed, and that's becoming online. It's becoming like very serious very
Mhm.
soon. And then I know Portugal and Greece are all becoming very serious.
Mhm.
And then Mexico is going to be like a massive market as well,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, I would say this year we didn't do so much of that, and we were also kind of like dialing in our two devices. And then next year we'll be very much on like a growth trajectory. We'll
Yeah.
be looking to expand outside of North America and into Europe.
Yeah, I would also suggest take a look at Brazil. It's a
Oh,
very
really?
robust market, a very large market, very medical focused. So doctors prescribe. You have to get your cannabis at a pharmacy. So it's regulated in a way, and quality and precision, all that stuff is going to be really important in that market. So if you're looking to expand, I think it's an interesting market to expand into.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't have any of my friends that are in Brazil or doing stuff there. I know Uruguay. I have a few friends that are in Uruguay doing like
Yeah.
large farms there.
Yeah, we'll talk offline, but Colombia, but Brazil is a huge market to look into. I think you're doing it right. With Germany is going to be large right now. They do reimbursement, insurance reimbursement, fully
Oh,
medical
really?
market. Yeah, it's a really interesting way that they pursue. Denmark is coming on board. A lot of those other countries. So UK is a little bit behind, but I think they're starting to move a little bit as well. Uh, Music. So tell me about your minor in music before I go into my music questions, because I'm curious. Are you a player or
Yeah, so I got my minor in performance classical guitar.
okay?
Yeah, so I played classical guitar since I was like 12, I think. Yeah, like 12. So I started when I was 12, and then I got into college, and then I wanted to like kind of force myself to continue practicing because I didn't want to lose it.
Hmm.
And the best way to do that was like to just do a minor in music, and it was cool because the minor in music was like a performance requirement,
Yeah.
and so I was in the guitar ensemble at UC Davis, and then there was also like a theory component, and I basically just learned about like all the classical composers. Like once every quarter, I would learn about Beethoven or
Yeah.
Handel or Mozart or Bach, and I was like, oh, cool, you know.
So do you have influences from a classical guitar standpoint, or is it like guitar influences? Period. It doesn't have to be like classical guitar or Spanish guitar flamenco or anything like that.
I played a lot of Debussy and a lot of Villalobos.
Really
Yeah.
interesting. Very
Do you know
cool.
those guys or?
Yeah,
Oh,
Villalobos
okay,
for
cool.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So for just from my music background a little bit, I used to be a music buyer for Tower Records, and Tower Records was a music chain for those of you young kids that don't know. It used to be records, and we used to go to the CDs and cassettes, and a Tower was just the greatest. And I got a tremendous amount of music education there. I've been a music guy since I was a kid too. I'm not really a player. I dabble in
Okay.
different things, but I'm more of an enthusiast, I guess, of music.
Enthusiast. Okay.
Yes. Um, so it'll lead me to some questions I ask all my guests, and then I have some music questions still. So please describe what your first experience with cannabis was like.
Yeah, I was with my friend Glenn, and we were at his house, and I was in let's see. I mean, I guess that was like my first like real experience because like
Mhm.
I tried a bong hit at like junior prom and like I
Yeah.
didn't get high. And apparently that's like a thing, right? You don't get high the first time. And so I wouldn't really call that an experience. But then like when I first like got high, I was with Glenn and it was like me, Nate, Glenn, and like maybe a couple other guys. And we were at his house and I like we did what did we do? He had like this he was like a huge stoner. And and we had this like big like a gravity bong
Yeah. Yeah.
and with like the water and everything and this is a long time ago, right? This is like 15, 16. I think it was like 17 um and like I hit this gravity bong. I think I just did like a little bit of the gravity bong and I smiled so hard that my cheeks were like hurting for like 3 hours straight. And I was just laughing for like 3 hours straight
That's
the
great.
first time. It was like such a weird experience. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, yeah, it was very odd.
It's so cool because I ask all the guests about their experiences, and it's so different from person to person.
Oh
And
yeah.
uh, and there's a couple reasons. First of all, we're all different, so our genetics are different. Number two, we never even question what are you consuming. What chemical variety is that? Is it more this more now that we're getting more sophisticated? We're sort of learning, but back in the day, yeah, it's weed. Weed, yeah, it's
It
weed
was
is weed.
weed.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
exactly.
weed. That was it. Like,
So, what was the first? Do you remember what was the first concert you ever attended?
I attended a POD concert.
Really cool.
Yeah. And it was like a birthday gift from my sister.
Okay, where was that in L.A.?
Yeah. Yeah, it was in LA. I don't remember where it was in LA, but my sister was she was like she used to go to concerts a lot when she was in high school, and I'm
Yeah.
like 4.5 years younger than her, and
Mhm.
so she would go to concerts all the time, and then eventually she got a job being like an usher at one of the concert halls,
Yeah.
and so she gave me like passes to one of the concerts that was playing, and I went and I was like, oh shit, this is cool. And I remember it was so awesome because they did Youth of the Nation. And they're like, oh,
Mhm.
like bring on like kids onto the stage. And I went onto the stage and I was like, what's up?
Oh man, that's a
Yeah,
great
it was
concert
cool.
experience. Really cool. What was the last concert you attended?
I mean, I'm not sure if this counts, but like last weekend I went to Exchange and saw Above and Beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
Why
guess it
not?
counts, right? It's like a nightclub. I'm not sure if it's like a concert per se, right? Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It's a performance, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's all matters. Um, so is there anybody that you're listening to these days that you really like that you want to share and let people in on?
Who am I listening to these days? Uh, I haven't been listening to a ton. Who I'm trying to think like because I listen to SoundCloud a lot
Yeah.
and I find it really good to like discover new artists and like when I was at JPL, I would be at my desk a lot, like designing or doing math or something like that. And I would always have SoundCloud on and I would be listening to these like kind of up and coming artists, right?
Yeah.
Because it's SoundCloud is great for search, right?
Yep.
And um and so I was listening to all these artists and I remember I would like listen to an artist like, oh shit. And SoundCloud has its own ecosystem too, right? Where like things trend on SoundCloud, and then
Yeah.
like you listen to the radio or something, and like it's not anywhere to be found. But like in the SoundCloud ecosystem, like you'll hear it once, and then a couple weeks later you'll hear a bunch of remixes, and so it has its own like vibe. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
And
it's there's a lot of artists that or have been discovered on SoundCloud, and some of them you won't even hear on the quote unquote radio, but all of a sudden, they get signed and they have a single on Spotify. So now they get into this regular rotation. But yeah, SoundCloud is
yeah,
definitely.
so I can't think of anyone specifically because I just listen to SoundCloud so much, and then I pull people
Hey
off.
man, you
Yeah,
said above and beyond, so I mean there you
yeah,
go.
yeah.
So here,
Yeah, I was listening to
here
Above and
people
Beyond.
listen to that.
I guess one
Uh,
group I really like is Loud Luxury.
Loud Luxury.
Yeah,
I never
yeah,
heard of them.
they're like an EDM group.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a song that got like super popular a couple years ago called Body,
Uh,
and then they just dropped a new album like a few months ago, and then I've seen them twice in the past few
cool.
months. So yeah.
There you go. So thanks for sharing. What has cannabis meant in your life?
Mint. I mean, cannabis was always like for me like a recreational alternative. I
Mm,
kind of have strong feelings against alcohol. Like I'm not like a huge alcohol consumer. I would say if you could choose your vices or you could choose like your reality altering sort of paths,
mm,
um, I could make a pretty good argument why alcohol is not the best one to choose. And for me, I always like bias towards cannabis, and that's kind of how I like live my life through like college and even now. And so I would say alcohol was like my choice for mind altering sort of experiences. And then now, like, I mostly use weed to go to sleep just because,
yeah.
I'm like running the company. It's kind of stressful. It's like hard to turn off.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like I need like a sledgehammer to turn off. But instead of a sledgehammer, I can take like a 5 milligram edible or 10 milligram edible and be able to like sleep with no problem at all.
Got it. Cool. All right. So, final bonus question. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
I mean, it was pretty messy, honestly. Yeah, it wasn't great. But if you were to walk into my room at the doorway and you look to your left, there was an aquarium. Not really like it was more like a terrarium, but it had a snake in it,
Yeah.
and I
What
had
kind? What
my
kind of snake?
a corn snake.
A corn snake. Got it.
Yeah, a corn snake. His name was Bubblegum, and he was an albino corn snake. And then if you go past that, there was a dresser, a wooden dresser, which actually I still have to this day. It's actually in the company now because I didn't know where to put it. And then on top of that was a big, I guess big. It was big because it was a CRT TV, but it
Yeah.
was only like 24 inches. I had my PlayStation there, and then that was next to the corner, and then on that wall was a huge window. Crossing the window was a ladder that went up to my bed because I didn't have a bunk bed, but I had a raised bed, and underneath the bed was my desk.
Cool.
And so if you took the ladder up to the bed, that's where the bed was. And then beneath that was a wooden desk. And to the left of the desk was my tool chest that I would have for like, I did a lot of RC cars, RC airplanes. We kind of
Yeah.
talked about that a little bit. And so I would have all my tools there for like soldering and like power tools and stuff. And then I had my desk, and that's where I would do my homework and stuff. And then to the right of that was my closet, and then if you were to go back to the doorway and look immediately to your right, I would have a bookcase which had all my books that I would read. And I mostly read like science fiction or fantasy books.
Got it. No posters or art or anything distinguishable on the wall.
Not that I can remember. I had like my eighth grade diploma right in between the window and my dresser. And uh what else did I have? I think I had a poster, but I can't remember what it was. And it was right above the eighth grade diploma.
Got it.
I don't know what it was. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So Natal, where can people find out more about you, about sorting robotics? Where can they get in touch with you? Social, website? Please share.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get in touch with me directly, you can follow me on Twitter. I don't really do much on Twitter, but if you send me a DM on Twitter, like Twitter/Nohtal, Nohtal.
Mhm.
And then if you want to get in touch with the company, I think the best way to do that would be to reach out from the website, and that's sortingrobotics.com. And then there's a contact form beneath there. If you reach out, like I will see it, and so will the rest of the company. So that's probably the two best ways.
Cool. Hey man, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And best of luck. I think what you're doing is super, super cool and it's absolutely necessary in our industry. So I appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, man.